Hello, I am Ruby Falconer, and today's date is May 4th, 2020. This is an astrological update from the perspective of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology. So, to locate ourselves, last week on April 25th, the planet Pluto changed direction. And for all intents and purposes, Pluto is still stationary. When a planet changes direction and is in that stationary phase, which from our perspective here on Earth looks as though the planet is not moving, it's as if it has stopped and is staying stationary in its orbit. It's an optical illusion that happens because we are also on a moving planet. But from our perspective here on Earth, it looks like that planet has stopped moving. When it's stationary, its influence is very powerful for us here on Earth. And what will happen with Pluto is it will move into retrograde motion, which looks like it's moving backwards. When retrograde motion happens, there's an internalization of the energy that that planet holds. But for right now, with Pluto being stationary, the Lord of the underworld, the Lord of regeneration, the God of death and rebirth is very powerful for us here on this planet. And even though Pluto has technically moved out of retrograde motion and is now, out of stationary motion and is now retrograde, it's only moved 3 minutes, which is like nothing. So for our perspective, it's still stationary. This week, we have 3 other planets that are starting to move into station. The first one is Saturn, which changes direction on the 10th and the 11th. It kind of depends on where you live in the United States and where you are in the world. Then the next day, we have Venus, which will be changing direction on the 12th and 13th. And then on the 14th, we have Jupiter, who is changing direction. So all 3 of these planets are now in the process of moving down into station. And they're all on the same degree that they're going to change direction on. So even though they're still very slowly moving forward, they're moving to that point of stationary energy. And so all 3 of those energies are going to be very powerful for us as well. I'm going to talk more specifically about Venus and Jupiter next week, but just for purposes of understanding what's going on here, the first one that changes direction, that's Saturn, which is this Sunday and also Monday. That's the principle of constriction and restriction in traditional astrology. He's Sobek, the old king in Shamanic Egyptian astrology. The next one, which is Venus, is the principle of values. What do we want to receive? That's Isis. And the third one is Jupiter, the principle of expansion, who is Horus. So all 3 of those are really slowing down. And so the energy right now, it just doesn't feel like we can move forward at all. And in fact, there's a lot of disagreements going on, a lot of splits, kind of typical of Venus being in Gemini. Venus moved into Gemini on April 3rd. And because it turned retrograde in Gemini, Venus is going to remain in the air sign Gemini until August 7th. Gemini is a sign that is all about possibilities. And so there's a lot of possible outcomes, a lot of possible ideas being thrown around. Gemini isn't attached to any of them. Gemini just likes the ideas. It's kind of like juggling a lot of balls. Gemini is very good at doing that and pretty good at catching them too. But sometimes Gemini can move into overwhelm, particularly when Gemini goes into station, into retrograde motion. There may well be a feeling of just too much information and overwhelm, just too much. And definitely right now, with Pluto now retrograde, stationary retrograde, Saturn moving to station, and then next week Jupiter moving to station, we've got that feeling of overwhelm. It's just all too much. To kind of add to the mix for this week, we have a full moon, and that takes place on May 7th in 6:45 a.m. here in the East Coast. This particular full moon is in Scorpio. And the full moons are always intense. The full moon represents that time each month when there's a culmination, kind of a crescendo of emotional energy. And Scorpio is perhaps one of the most intense of the signs. It's a water sign, extremely passionate, extremely emotionally intense. And so Scorpio full moons are traditionally pretty intense times anyway, when passions kind of rise to the surface, emotional expression rises to the surface in a very intense sort of way. And in traditional astrology, Scorpio is about the death and rebirth process. It's ruled by Pluto. So there's a close association with those elements of that energy of death and rebirth. It's Bast in Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, who is the goddess who activates within us our holy longing. And it does represent a time where, in its shadow, certainly energies can come up with Scorpio new moons around distrust, fears of betrayal, feelings of betrayal, suspicions, passionate intensity. All of that sort of comes with the territory. So that's our week. It's a kind of an intense, emotionally intense week with not a lot of forward movement, but rather having to sit with the conflicts and the separations. And if we look at what's happening, and I'm just going to speak to what's happening here in the United States, although I know that globally, a lot of countries are starting to open up. Certainly that's happening here in the US, but because of the way we're set up, every state gets to determine the rules around reopening for themselves. And so if you look at a map of the United States, half of the states are opening up, half of the states are closing down, staying closed down, and other ones are sort of in between throughout this month, throughout the month of May. Most states will start to open up to some degree or another. Some are charging full charge into it and are opening up a lot of stuff. Others are opening up step by step by step. It's a real kind of crazy quilt of different ways of doing this, and a lot of disagreements around how to do it and whether it should be done at all. Um, Protests, anti-quarantine protests, around opening up now. A lot of conspiracy theories. This very much has to do with the moon in Scorpio, around what's really going on behind the scenes, what's really causing this pandemic, whether there's even a pandemic at all. It's a real mixed bag right now, and that's not going to change. Where early on, I think, for most of us, when this pandemic, I'm just going to speak here in the United States, got serious, there was a certain kind of unity around, yes, let's all kind of cooperate with each other and take care of each other. That is pretty much shattered and pretty much fractured right now. And so that's what's going on here in the US, is we have this fracturing and a lot of intense emotions around what's really under the surface. Again, that's very much a Scorpio full moon sort of things. What's really going on? What's behind the curtain that we can't see? So here we are. And as we move forward this week, we are going to feel more of the energies of the other three planets that are slowing down to station, and most particularly Saturn. We will feel more from Venus and Jupiter next week, but it is Saturn who's changing direction first in this string of three. And by the end of the week, Saturn will be full on stationary. And when Saturn turns stationary or becomes stationary, the feelings of restriction, of limitation, of constriction become very powerful. In Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, Saturn is Sobek, the old king. And the thing about the old king is he's wise, he knows what he's doing, but he also does not like to let go of power. If there's an image of patriarchal energy, as most people understand it, which is sort of repressive and oppressive, it is Saturn, Sobek, the old king. In Greek and Roman myth, Saturn was, that was his Roman name. His name to the Greeks was Kronos. This is the father who is so afraid of his children usurping his power, he swallows them whole. So it's that real oppressive kind of energy, and it's going to really be here. So we all need to keep this in mind that kind of restrictive energy is very powerful. And how people interpret that, for some people, it will be the quarantine. That's the restrictive patriarchal kind of energy. For others, it will be opening too soon, or it would be kind of that struggle between people who think we're opening too soon and people who think that we um, we're keeping the quarantine in place for too long. So that kind of oppositional struggle is very powerful when Saturn is in the house. And that's an element around the Great Shift energy. Two of the planets that are part of the Great Shift, and we have Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. Two of them are Saturn and Jupiter, and they are inherently oppositional. Saturn is the principle of constriction, Jupiter is the principle of expansion. In the Egyptian archetypal energy, we have what Linda Starwolf and Ninky Scully have called the reconciliation of the opposites. These two represent a primary foundational piece of duality, and that struggle between them demands a solution of the third thing, because there's no resolution between these two. It's only when we bring in something that's bigger than this oppositional struggle that we find the third thing. So I want to speak into that a little bit. And that's what our journey today is going to be about. And I think the best way to address this is to speak into some of the elements that come up when we think about the sign Aquarius. We have right now the planet Mars in the sign Aquarius, and we also have Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn tiptoed into Aquarius at the end of March and is going to stay in the sign of Aquarius until July 1st, when it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn again. But for right now, we have that kind of constricting, restricting energy of the old king expressing itself through the sign Aquarius. And even though there's a lot of other elemental signs that are important right now, certainly Scorpio is important. Its opposite, Taurus, is very important right now. And we're seeing that play out. We felt those energies very much in the last couple of weeks with kind of the Saturn, the loose Saturn, Uranus square being touched off by energies coming through the sign Taurus. Right now, I think it's important for us to sort of look at our vision for the future. A lot of people have asked me if I feel we're in the Aquarian age, or if there's a particular point where I'd be willing to say we're now in the age of Aquarius. And I could do a whole talk just on that. Perhaps sometime I will. But the long and the short of it for me is I do think this transition into the Aquarian age has been going on for quite a long time, for about 250 years from my perspective. We can go back to the late 1700s when we had the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and Aquarius is a very revolutionary sign. Its natural ruler is Uranus, which is the planet most associated with revolutionary energy. Those three revolutions really transformed our world and took us in many ways, or put us on the path toward the world that we live in now. And as we move forward, our biggest struggle as we look forward is what kind of world are we going to create once the dust settles? It's very clear that this great shift energy, which is very prominent in 2020, has to do with the crumbling of existing structures. Most of this great shift energy is taking place in the sign Capricorn, which is the sign that is most associated with the structures that run society, and these structures are crumbling. We don't really know yet what this is going to mean, but we certainly know that the impact that the coronavirus is having on the economy, both the global economy as well as the economy in the United States, is huge, and we do not yet know what the impact is going to be. We see things about how this is going to be as big or bigger than the Great Depression that happened in the 1930s. There's no way for us to know yet what the impact is going to be, but we see projections of economies around the world shrinking by a huge percentage points, which suggests that hard times are ahead for all of us. We see governments scrambling to try to support people in ways that they can. And I think all of us have an intuitive understanding that how long can that go on? You know, how much money is there in the world to support individuals who are going to be needing help and support businesses that are going to be needing help as we go forward? So this is all very scary. And so the concerns that people have about keeping the economy closed and keeping the quarantine in place, these are very real and they're valid and they're understandable. You know, it's a very frightening thing to think about having our economy in the United States shut down for 6 weeks and continuing to do that. And then we have the opposite point that if we open up too soon, we're going to have more deaths. So we're trading off lives versus the economy. And, you know, aside from any concerns that we may have around too much of the money going to corporations or to governments, what is the quality of life going to be for ordinary people in a post pandemic reality? And so, this very difficult thing that seems to be happening of trading lives versus the quality of life is very real. And it's kind of that Saturn Jupiter opposition, the reconciliation of the opposites. You know, the what's behind the age of Aquarius and the movement into this age is a discussion around the rights and needs of the collective versus the rights and needs of the individual. And that's going to be an ongoing struggle as we move into this age. You know, on the one hand, we can very much see the impact of the age of Aquarius all around us. Aquarius rules technology. And we live in a technological world. We live in a world where we all have smartphones, we all have computers, and we all have the benefits of technology. You know, I can talk to you, to people who live across the United States and around the world via technology. We have social media that's made us aware that it's all one planet. None of this respects boundaries. We also have a coronavirus, which doesn't respect borders either. You know, so it's very clear that we live on one planet. And as we move forward, what is that going to look like? How are we going to resolve the issues that are so prominent right now, with some people being afraid of what one world might look like and other people fully embracing it and wanting there to be cooperative economic and cooperative distribution systems, cooperative governmental systems around the world? You know, how do we do this? How do we create a world that is a collective? You know, all we have to do is go out in space and, you know, look at those pictures of our beautiful blue planet and know that there's no borders, there's no boundaries. You know, this is all one world. So how do we create a connected planet that respects diversity and respects the rights of the individual without being overly oppressive? You know, this is an ongoing issue and it's very prominent right now. So this is very much about the blooming age of Aquarius. And as we move forward here, and the coronavirus is going to be an impetus for some of this, there are going to be more technological advances happening very quickly. You know, artificial intelligence, you know, those of you who are, you know, read these sorts of things, it's happening already. And so what is it, how is it going to be affected by the needs of our changing world that comes as a result of this pandemic and the pandemics that will come in the future, as well as other considerations such as 5G technology, you know, robots and drones taking over people's jobs, all of this. How are we going to create some kind of world that is not oppressive? The shadow side of Aquarius, and everything has its shadow. You know, the beautiful side of Aquarius is this idea of a connected planet, an interrelated planet that supports and sustains individuals in attaining their full potential so that they can contribute back in some way to the collective. That's its ideal. The shadow side is an authoritarian government where everybody has to move in lockstep to the idea of what's best for the collective. And the shadow, you always look at the opposite sign. The opposite sign to Aquarius is Leo, and the shadow side of Leo is megalomania. So we've definitely got some big things that we have to be talking about. And to go back to this concept, this idea is, are we in the age of Aquarius yet? I think the Aquarian energy is extremely strong, but the Piscean energy hasn't given up the ghost. The Piscean energy is at its best, was very much about love and forgiveness and bringing compassion into the world. That's the best aspect of the Piscean world. As it has deteriorated, some of the worst aspects of Virgo, the opposite sign, has come in, which is judgmentalism and refusing to be open to other people's point of view because it doesn't meet the standards of the individuals who think they know how things ought to be. That's the worst of Virgo, is an excessive criticism and judgmentalism, hyper criticism and judgmentalism of other people. And so we definitely have those elements. As the age of Pisces is dying, we've seen a disintegration. Pisces is about the point in the zodiac where everything dissolves away into the primordial soup. So we're definitely seeing a dissolving away and a disintegration, which tells me that the age of Pisces is still with us. And accompanying that, we're seeing a lot of judgmentalism and a lot of criticism of other people, and a distinct lack of compassion and forgiveness, which is the best of the Piscean age. So we're very much in the deterioration of this age, and certainly the Aquarian age is coming on strong. But we're right in between the worlds right now, and we're caught in this kind of oppositional duality where a lot of people are taking sides and they think they know the truth, and those other people do not know. They are not awake. They're not, it doesn't really matter which side of the picture you're on. The opposites say this about the other side. When are they going to wake up? We're awake and they aren't. We're tuned in, they're not. It doesn't matter which side you're on. They're both saying that. So it's a hard place to be. So the journey that I want to offer this week is with the Shamanic Egyptian archetype that is aligned with the sign Aquarius. And this is Ptah. His name is spelled P-T-A-H. In the Egyptian pantheon, Ptah is a creator god. There's a couple of them. Actually, the ruler of Capricorn, Khnum, is also a creator god. But while Khnum created the creatures of earth, the animals and the humans who walk upon and fly upon and swim on earth, who live on earth, Ptah is the creator of heaven and earth. And he created heaven and earth by the words that he spoke. That's a concept that shows up in other world myths. So his words that he speaks, the thoughts that he thinks, and the words that he speaks create reality. So this is an important concept that we frequently run into, that our thoughts and our words create our personal reality. They create our collective reality as well. Now, what's most important to know about Ptah is that his words are connected to his heart. In the Anubis Oracle deck, which was created by Linda Starwolf and Nikki Scully, and is part of the sort of the origins of Shamanic Egyptian astrology, Ptah is shown as a figure with his tongue connected to his heart. And so what's most important about this idea is that the thoughts that we think, the ideas that we form, the words that we speak need to be connected to our heart and run through the energy of our heart, which to the Egyptians was very important. For them, consciousness lived in the heart. They didn't believe that it lived in the brain. They believed it lived in the heart. So the concept of the heart mind is an idea that will be very familiar to them, because they really believe that all conscious ideas need to be run through this area of compassion and love, which is the heart. This is very important because as we move forward and we create new technologies, they better be run through the heart. We've already seen tremendous damage on planet Earth, and can be seen by the kind of environmental catastrophes that we've had, running from Chernobyl to the explosion of the oil platform in the Gulf, to the Exxon Valdez polluting the waters in Alaska, and any number of other, Love Canal, any number of other environmental catastrophes that we have experienced, where the earth itself has been poisoned by the creations of technology. And so it's not enough just to create some wonderful new idea that's going to make people's lives easier and create a lot of money for people. It's really important that we run those ideas through our heart and make sure that what we're creating, what we're producing, doesn't do harm to the earth and to its creatures. And so this is an idea that we need to take forward with us as we move into the age of Aquarius. And it's particularly germane now as we see our present structures crumbling, and we understand intuitively that we have an opportunity here to create new structures. And so the question becomes, where are these structures going to come from? What is going to motivate them? So I want to invite everyone to get yourself comfortable. Take a couple of nice deep breaths, because we're going to go on a journey with Ptah, and we're going to see how we can create some new structures in our own lives. Because as we create structures in our own lives, they contribute to the collective structures that will be created on planet Earth. So it's very important for us to have this connection with our hearts as we move forward in our own lives. Because we are, whether we realize it or not, we are contributing with our thoughts and our minds and our ideas to the planetary structure that's going to exist in the future. So take a couple of nice deep breaths. And again, another nice deep breath. And let go of any distractions, just allowing yourself to come completely present. And move into the silence within you. I want to invite you to pay particular attention to your heart chakra, and maybe put your hand, your palm on your heart. And imagine that as you inhale, you're breathing into your hand, so that you're expanding that energy in your heart chakra, and really feeling the connection of it there. And I invite you now to imagine that you are in a beautiful place in nature. And what is unique about this place is it is so incredibly lush in some way. It might be lush in the foliage, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the fruits that are growing on the trees. It might be lush in just the beauty. Perhaps you're in some place in the desert, and even though there aren't plants growing there, there's incredible colors. There's a vastness that is incredibly beautiful and lush. You might be someplace where you have a view of something in the distance, and you see amazing colors. Wherever it is a feast for your senses, and it makes your heart sing. That's the most important point. It makes your heart sing. It opens your heart chakra. And so as your heart chakra opens, put a little more pressure on that area so you can feel that expansion of your heart energy. And keep breathing into that heart space. And you are joined now in this place that you have created in your mind's eye. You are joined now by the god, the Egyptian god Ptah. And Ptah frequently presents himself as a man with blue skin. And that may be how he presents himself to you, or he may come another way. However he shows up is right for you. But this is Ptah. This is the creator of heaven and earth. He steps out of the void of nothingness, no thing else. And out of his deep love, his huge heart, and his amazing mind, out of the connection between these two, he creates something out of nothing. And so, with his assistance, with his love and compassion for you, I invite you now to enter that void within you, that place of no thingness, where there is nothing. There is the void, there is the darkness within, there is the quiet within. And from that place, feel a connection between that heart chakra, which you have activated, and your third eye, that place of vision. You may feel a pulsing taking place in your third eye as your fourth chakra, your heart chakra, and your sixth chakra, your third eye connect. And out of this place of no thingness comes a personal vision for you, a vision of something that is yours to create. It may be something small that has something to do with creating something in your home, in your space, perhaps an altar, perhaps changing something in your environment. It may be a big vision, but whatever it is, it moves into your third eye, that place of vision, and it comes from your heart. So the connection is between your heart and your third eye. And Ptah is here with you. He is activating this vision for you. And he is activating that connection between your heart and your mind. Something for you to create that comes from your place of love and compassion within you. So I'm going to be quiet here for a couple of minutes and let you go on a journey with Ptah. And let him reveal to you that vision that is uniquely yours. Something for you to act on, something for you to create that is connected to your heart. Deep breath now. Remember to breathe. Taking another nice deep breath, staying in this place, connected to Ptah, connected to your unique vision. This is a download just for you. You are joined now by Isis, Queen Mother of Heaven, who wraps her rainbow wings around you. One wing across your heart chakra, one wing across your third eye. And she is cementing that connection between your heart and your mind, helping you to remember that all of your ideas, all of your thoughts, all of the words that you speak need to be connected to your heart. And that this vision that you have been given by Ptah, this vision of something that is yours to create, must remain connected to your heart. And so lie back in the arms of Isis. Feel her love and compassion. She is with us through every transition that we move through, every transformation. She's always there, holding us in her rainbow wings, moving us from one version of ourselves to another. So lie back and receive her healing energy, and feeling her cementing this connection between your heart and your mind. Breathe that in. And another nice deep breath. And let yourself come slowly back into the room, bringing with you what you have received from Ptah and Isis, giving thanks to them both, and making a quiet commitment to yourself to pay attention to the thoughts that you think, to pay attention to the words that you speak, to doing your best to remember to run them through your heart, to speak your truth, but to maintain an open heart, to be kind at the same time you are truthful, and to remember that what you create must be run through your heart. Will it serve the people? Does it serve your greatest good? Will it do harm? If it does harm, it needs more work. It's that simple. If it does harm, it needs more work. And know that as you do this work for you personally, you are contributing to the collective vision that we want to take forward into the future. as we navigate this transition between the ages. It can't be either or. It can't be just the needs of the collective. It can't be just the needs of individuals. We have to find a way to hold them both, to reconcile the opposites. We have to create a new collective that honors the needs of both. It is all about what is good for the collective, that honors individual rights and diversity. This can be done. It absolutely can be done. But in order to do it, we have to step out of the duality ourselves and see the bigger picture. That is the message of the Age of Aquarius. That's what it's about. So thank you to you all, and I look forward to talking to you again.